Hi, how's it going? My name is Chris, and if you're watching, I want to say thanks. Today, we're going to be talking about this little nifty camera that could, the Canon T4i. Also known as the 650D outside of the US market, the Canon T4i was released in 2012, and at that time, everybody thought that the world was ending.
In prophecy, the world will end in late 2012.
The Avengers was just released.
If we can't protect the Earth, you can be damn sure we'll avenge it.
And Kendrick dropped Good Kid, Mad City.
Promise that you will sing about me. Promise that you will sing about me.
The T4i is an 18 megapixel APS-C size crop sensor camera. At 18 megapixels, the camera is still useful for today in social media, and you can even do medium-sized printing with a little crop. The T4i captures images in JPEG, RAW, and JPEG plus RAW. It can shoot up to 5 frames per second in JPEG, and 3 frames per second with JPEG plus RAW. The camera can record in 1080p 24 and 30 frames per second, and you can even get 60 frames per second at the cost of lower image quality, which is 720p, so you can kind of decide what you want to go from there. I've even seen and read that you can download Magic Lantern on this thing. If you're not familiar with Magic Lantern, it's essentially a software that you load onto an SD card and then you install it onto the camera, which overlays Canon's native software, allowing you to use certain tools like focus peaking, zebras, and even recording RAW. I've seen that you can get 14-bit RAW recording, but can confirm that 12-bit RAW was used. It could turn this little camera that could into the beast that can. And you never know. I may load that over this and do a whole video on that, so stay tuned. Some fun facts about the camera. This is actually the first DSLR ever produced that has a touch LCD screen, which is honestly on par with my Canon R6. And the menu it has is really intuitive. It's an evolved form from the earlier menu that Canon used to use on cameras like the 30D, the 10D, 20D, or like the 5D Classic I have. For example, this is an EOS D30, which is Canon's first fully designed and produced DSLR that they made. This is the original menu. It's pretty archaic, but in my opinion, I have no problem using this menu either. And for another idea, this is a Canon 5D Classic, which has the same exact menu as their first DSLR. Now this is the upgraded menu. The operation is really intuitive. It's honestly exactly like using a newer, modern day DSLR or mirrorless camera. The lenses. The Canon T4i being a crop sensor camera, it does utilize the EFS mount, or if you don't have EFS lenses, you can always use EF. For example, this is a Canon 50mm 1.8, and you can see this is probably the most common setup you'll see. There's definitely a lot of options, but it is a 1.6 times crop, turning this 50mm into an 80mm. So you get that. And with it taking an EFS to an EF mount, there are so many options. You can use anything from native Canon lenses to Sigma lenses like this 85mm 1.4. I also have the Sigma 24-70 2.8. You can also utilize manufacturers like Tamron, Rokinon, Samyang. There's a ton of them out there. TT Artisans. There's so many options you can use that you don't have to stick with just Canon. Nowadays, you can find the body anywhere on the secondhand market for $150 up to $300. We were lucky enough to get this unit gifted to us by my wife's aunt. Thank you, Aunt Trudy, which was awesome because the moment we got this camera, I had it glued to me. And to be honest, I have a Canon R6, which is a very capable camera. It's a very modern camera. But getting this was so much fun. The R6 started gathering dust just because how much fun this camera was. Honestly, this camera is still so capable nowadays. It's kind of crazy. You have all the recording capabilities you would need. You have all the adaptive lenses you can get. I know that there's this kind of hierarchy when it comes to YouTube and YouTubers showing you the latest and greatest, and it might kind of draw this concept in your mind that you need to have the best camera in order to produce the best content or to get the best quality out of something, which I really want to drive this concept that you don't need that. I promise you, you do not need that. You do not need the latest and greatest. You do not need to spend thousands of dollars on a camera body and lenses. I mean, the lenses part, you might need to spend a lot of money on that, but the camera body is not as important as you may think. And that's coming from someone who did invest a lot of money into a camera. And I really wish that somebody would drive this concept, because it would encourage so many more people to get into the scene and start learning the craft and developing the fundamentals, which are so much more important than getting a camera body that costs a couple thousand, and you're going to end up changing that camera body out in a couple years anyways. There are a lot of features that this camera has, and there are some shortcomings that it has also, which brings me to my next point, the pros. The biggest pro that this camera has, in my opinion, there's two. The price. At $150 to $200 on average, that's a great price for this camera. The second, magic lantern. If you are someone who is interested in videography or learning cinematography, Magic Lantern is such an awesome concept to be able to install over the native software and get those high-end features on this $150 camera body. I'm very, very surprised that this camera doesn't shoot up in price. The quality. I mean, look at this thing. This camera is durable. You can toss it around. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could toss it around. It can take that abuse. It's a stainless steel and polycarbonate body. It's very durable. It's definitely going to be able to withstand. I mean, it's 12 years old at this point. The camera is solid when you hold it in your hands. I have big hands. I'm 6'2". I'm a pretty broad guy. I'm a tall glass of water. But this camera honestly feels so good in the hands. And yeah, my pinky sits on the bottom, but that's not a big deal. It really doesn't bother me. If anything, it feels like there's more support to it. That never really affected me. People always complain on cameras, oh, my hand doesn't fit on it. You can literally like grab this thing. I mean, I don't know if you guys can see that. Look at the depth on that. That is such a deep hand grip. I mean, that so easy just to hold with the fingertips. Like, it holds on there. Another pro is that it has a 1.6 times crop, which is awesome because you don't have to invest in these super expensive lenses. I mean, you eventually probably will, but you don't have to invest in these lenses. I think the smartest concept you could do is, if you have a crop sensor camera, is invest in the full frame counterparts of the lenses. That way, when you do upgrade, you just take those lenses and transfer them. So like I mentioned, this 50 millimeter turns into an 80 millimeter. This 85 millimeter turns into a 136. You'd essentially have to get a 70 to 200 or 100 millimeter macro, but this is a 1.4. For example, the 24 to 70 that I have on the R6 right now would turn into a 38.5 to 112 millimeter at a 2.8. With being able to take those lenses and putting them onto the full frame bodies when you do upgrade down the line, you're just future proofing yourself and saving yourself money down the line as you go. And another pro is the touchscreen. I mean, who doesn't want a touchscreen in these modern cameras? It's such a benefit to have touch tracking, change settings. It's just a faster, more convenient concept. And another great pro about this camera, I've seen you can actually get clean HDMI out. And if you're not familiar with that, essentially a clean HDMI out is when you look at a camera screen and you see all the information around the box and you see the little eye icon when it's tracking your eye. That's not a clean HDMI. It's reflected onto the screen when you're using the camera as a webcam. So a clean HDMI is, you still get all these features. You're still able to visually see all of the settings that the camera has. You're still able to see that it's on eye tracking, but the viewers and the webcam does not pick that up. So that's a huge bonus, which something like the Canon M50, a newer, modern mirrorless camera, does not offer. Something like that, you'd have to get the Canon M50 Mark II, which is just a workaround. Now the con. It doesn't have many, but it does have some. One of the biggest cons I'd say is ports. For example, you only have an audio port. You don't have a headphone port, so you can't monitor the onboard audio that's coming from this when you're recording. Another con is the camera just has a single SD card slot, which is kind of a bummer. So if redundancy is the name of the game, you don't really have that on here. So you'd have to find a workaround on that. To be honest, this camera is not a professional camera and was not designed to be. It's an entry-level consumer camera that has a ton of capabilities and a ton of features to bring the everyday photographer and help them develop the fundamentals and learn the craft to develop their skill more to where they can upgrade down the line. I'd say with the few cons that it does have, there are easy workarounds. For example, the onboard audio. The workaround would be, if you're shooting video seriously, you're probably using something like an external audio recorder, and you can monitor the audio from that, because that gives you more room to work with and more room to adjust the audio afterwards than you would on something like this, because the preamps on cameras like this are not the main focus of the camera. All in all, I really feel that the benefits of the camera far outweigh the cons, which brings me to my next point. Who's it for? That's obviously a broad question, because in theory, it can be for everyone. It can be for anyone. Anyone can throw it on a neck strap and carry it around all day and yada, 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 all that sweet stuff. But let's try to tailor that a little more and give you a little bit more of a concise answer for this. The camera, in my opinion, is probably tailored more for someone who's a beginner photographer, intermediate photographer, someone who's getting into videography and wants to learn the basics, or someone who's learning cinematography, or gamers. I really feel with Magic Lantern and the capabilities that opens up the doors for this unit, it can be a awesome cinema rig. I know it was targeted and marketed for beginners, but to be fair, the capabilities that this has, this can be an awesome B camera. This can be an awesome backup setup camera. You can use it for a webcam. I feel if you are someone who just takes pictures on your phones, or maybe has a point and shoot and wants to start being able to learn more, change lenses, and maybe get more out of the camera's functionality, this is perfect for you. I feel like if you are a gamer or a streamer or someone who wants to be able to upgrade the quality from a regular stick-on webcam, this is definitely for you. I feel like if you are someone in high school, someone in college who is learning videography and you want to experiment and get Magic Lantern, then this camera's for you. I really feel like if you just want to have a solid camera by your side that you can kind of toss around, bring with you, put it on the shelf here, take it into the car, and want to make sure that you have something solid as a backup, I feel that there are a lot of possibilities for this. I know that there's a lot of potential, and it's kind of interesting because the fact that people nowadays with cameras at $150 price range, your only limitations are your own creativity. So that's my thoughts on the Canon T4i. And if you like what you've seen, if it was informative, or if you have any information, please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts. Peace.